We're standing at a place absolutely central to world history. We can even say that this place is the place of the birth of the modern world. What a strange statement. But when we think about the ages of globalization, from the Paleolithic to the Neolithic, to the age of domestication of the horses, to the classical empires, we can think of the place where we are this moment in the Alcalá de Henares as the bridge between the classical world and the world of the ocean empires, the world that created our modern era with the sea routes from Europe to the Americas and to Asia, because this place is absolutely central. It may be the place to tell that story. Now I'm standing in front of a magnificent Renaissance structure. This is actually the facade of a great university that was established here by a papal bull that gave the rights to establish a university here in 1499. And this university, known to us today as Complutense University, one of the world's great universities, began here 500 years ago. Actually, even centuries before the university was a Stadium Generale, a place of education that dates back to 1293. Now, why here in Alcalá de Henares? Why in this location? And why Complutense University? Well, that takes us back another 1,000 years, in fact, because this place was already, at the turn of the first millennium, a Roman settlement, Complutum. This was an important part of the Roman Empire, and the Roman center of Complutum was a very active part of the empire, a very rich part with rich mines and agriculture. It was a training ground for Julius Caesar, who served here in this part of the Roman Empire before he waged his wars in Gaul. It was a place of competition between Rome and Carthage even centuries before that, because this place has been settled for 3 millennia as an active trading, agricultural, and mining center of the Western Mediterranean. Now, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, this region, the Iberian Peninsula, and this place was conquered by Germanic tribes, by the Visigoths, and they ruled here as a Christian Germanic kingdom in this place until 1711, when the Arabs conquered the Iberian Peninsula and established Al-Andalus, the Umayyad dynasty rule over the Iberian Peninsula. And this is why this place is called Alcalá. That is an Arab word meaning fortress. Alcalá on the Henares River. The Henares River, which flows from here to the Jarama, to the Tagus River, out to the Atlantic Ocean. Well, the Arabs ruled the Iberian Peninsula for hundreds of years until Christian kingdoms starting in the north of the Iberian Peninsula, Asturias and León and Castile, began a so-called reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula as Christian kingdoms came to defeat the Islamic states of the Iberian Peninsula, and eventually the Christian kingdoms ended up conquering all of the Iberian Peninsula in the name of Christendom by 1492. And that set of events, that Reconquista, brings us to this cite this place because it's in those years that decisive events took place that reshaped the entire world. The Reconquista came to this place already around 1300 AD as Castile reconquered this territory. These lands became part of the holdings of the Archbishop of Toledo, and this place became a settled part of Castile. When Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabel of Castile married, and the two Catholic monarchs formed the joint kingdom of Aragon and Castile, this created the basis of what would become Spain in its modernity. And in those years, the late 15th century, this place assumed greater and greater significance. It was already a place of education for hundreds of years, and one of its most powerful and distinguished alumni, who would become a cardinal of this region, Cardinal Cisneros, became confessor to Isabella and a very powerful figure in the new unified state of the Catholic monarchs. And it was as alumnus of the Stadium Generale that Cisneros appealed to the Pope in 1499 for the papal bull, the permission to establish a university here. The university is also a mark of a transformation that is quite remarkable. Of course, universities in Europe have been operating for hundreds of years, dating back to the oldest continuing operating university today, the University of Bologna, which formed at the end of the 12th century. But this new university, Complutense, named after Completum, the Roman settlement, was to be something different, because for the first time there would be a planned city, a planned campus for the university. So we're seeing the facade of what is a large expanse of land designed for the first time as a campus of the university, and designed consciously in the name of Civitas Dei, the name of the city of God, referring back, of course, to Augustine's monumental work. And so this is the first modern campus, one can say, not the oldest university of Europe, but the first campus-based university of Europe. Now, in this place in the 1480s, another absolutely remarkable event occurred, the birth of our modern world, and that was a meeting of a Genoese explorer and adventurer. We know him as Christopher Columbus, and he met with Queen Isabella and made a pitch. He had made a pitch to the King of Portugal and was dismissed. He tried again with Queen Isabella. The pitch was, "Fund me, I will voyage to the west across the Atlantic Ocean to the riches of Asia. And if you fund me, you will gain the riches of Asia." Well, there was a lot of debate. The experts of the time knew that the world was round and that in principle one could go west to Asia, but they thought that Columbus's navigational calculations, his estimates of the distance, were way off the mark, and that Asia was in fact far more distant than Columbus felt. So Columbus made his pitches around the monarchies of Europe and faced a great deal of skepticism. It was rebuffed by the Portuguese king, was rebuffed initially by Isabella and her court experts. But finally he prevailed because Queen Isabella realized that maybe he was going to take his venture somewhere else, better to fund his attempt rather than to have Columbus serve on behalf of some competing monarch. So a voyage was agreed. The meetings that took place in Alcalá de Henares set the stage for the world-changing 4 voyages of Columbus across the Atlantic from 1492 in the first voyage to 1503 in Columbus's final voyage. We mark the end of the Classic Age and the birth of the age of transoceanic empires in 1492 with Columbus's arrival in Hispaniola. And of course, 6 years after that event, Vasco da Gama circled the Cape of Good Hope and proved the navigability of the oceans from Europe to Asia and back, and the world was fundamentally transformed. Spain and Portugal became the center of truly world empires for the first time in human history. Columbus didn't reach the East Indies as he promised. He didn't reach Asia. He named the peoples that he met wrongly as Indios, thinking that he had reached India, and he held that belief to the end of his life in the early years of the 16th century. But of course, he had discovered the sea route to the Americas, and it was the settling of the Americas by colonies of Spain and Portugal that truly transformed the world, for the first time connecting the old world with the native inhabitants of the Americas who had arrived at the end of the last ice age, and thereby reconnecting all of the world decisively. 1492 was in fact marked by 3 fundamental transformations: the discovery of the sea route to the Americas by Columbus, the completion of the Reconquista, of the so-called Reconquest, by Christian Spain with the defeat of the final Islamic hold in Iberia, Granada, which fell in 1492. And in 1492, another remarkable tragic event in Western culture, the order by Isabel and Ferdinand for the expulsion of the Jews from Spain and for the forced conversion of Muslims or Jews who remained, so that Spain would be an entirely Catholic kingdom. And that, of course, also transformed Western history. It created a pattern of extreme intolerance that created profound harms for Spain in its own future and for European culture and Western culture that in many ways lives even until today, often with horrific and tragic consequences. The confiscated fortunes of the Jews were used by the state for the new conquests in the Americas, among other uses. And so these 3 fundamental events were world-changing. They bring us from the old world, as it were, the world of the classic empires, to the new transoceanic age and to the birth of early global capitalism, a transformation of the world society. Well, we're not done with the story of this place, because this place remained a very important part of Spain's history for more than another century. Leading figures were born here. Ferdinand, who would become Holy Roman Emperor, was born to daughter of Queen Isabella. So Ferdinand, who would become Holy Roman Emperor, has his birth here. Catherine of Aragon, daughter of Isabella, would become the first queen of Henry VIII, and a very unfortunate one at that, as Henry VIII went on to his subsequent brides in quest of a male heir. And another towering figure of world history was born in Alcalá de Henares and plays a role until today. And I'm speaking of Miguel de Cervantes, who was born in this place in the second half of the 16th century, also who lived a most remarkable life. He was born to parents who had been forced out or pushed out of Cordoba and who arrived here. It's thought by many historians that they were conversos, that is, Jews who had converted to Christianity and faced hardships and exclusions on that account. Cervantes tried to find his way in what is itself a remarkably picaresque and picturesque life. He fled this region for reasons that are unclear, arrived in Rome, became an assistant to a cardinal of Rome who had been a bishop in this region, enlisted into the Christian wars against the Ottomans, fought in the sea battle of Lepanto in 1571, was badly wounded in that sea battle in which the Christian forces, the Holy Roman Empire, beat the Ottomans on the sea and regained a measure of control in the Mediterranean. Cervantes returned by ship towards Iberia, but was captured by pirates and held captive for a number of years in North Africa. He was later ransomed by a mission that was freeing captured Christians being held hostage in North Africa. He made his way back to Spain and to Madrid, the capital of the Spanish Empire, and he sat down to write, and of course he wrote Don Quixote, which is regarded as the world's first novel and one of the most important books ever written. And I'm standing just here where actually tomorrow, as I film, the Cervantes Prize will be awarded. It's a prize in the memory and honor and tradition of Cervantes for the greatest literary achievements in the Spanish language. And this prize continues to this day, remembering one of the great sons of Alcalá de Henares. So I think we can say that this is a place absolutely central in world history, a bridge from the old world to the new world, a major point of breakthrough for university life, which has transformed the world, a major point of cultural innovation, giving us Miguel de Cervantes and his lasting and profound contributions to world culture. It's not often that you find all of these forces at work in one place, but as a great confluence of civilizations, a place that has brought the Phoenicians, Carthage, Rome, the Arab civilizations, the Christian civilizations, Jewish civilization together. Perhaps this helps us to explain what has made this place unique in the world and so important as a center of world history. For a lover of globalization, the interconnectedness of culture and society across the world, it's hard to think of a more wonderful and beautiful place than where I'm standing on the left bank of the Guadalquivir River in front of Cordoba, an ancient city of spectacular cultural and historical significance, and it represents the confluence of at least 5 civilizations, 5 major cultures that came together in this place. This is the Roman culture. This is the Arab culture. This is the Berber culture of Islamic North Africa. This is the Jewish culture in the Mediterranean region. And it is the Christian culture of the Catholic Kingdom of Spain. 5 kingdoms together, often overlapping, often merging, making a syncretism in culture, in philosophy, in architecture, in the arts that is a treasure for the world. And from this spot, we can see this confluence of civilizations in front of the Guadalquivir River, which is the reason why this is such a strategic place. This river, which flows from here to the Mediterranean through the city of Seville and Cadiz, and therefore was a navigable river to this place and a major port for Mediterranean trade throughout history, and incidentally a name, Guadalquivir, which is itself reflecting the Arabic influence, because that is Wadi al-Kabir, the great river. Wadi, river, al-Kabir, great in Arabic, and hence the name. We see first a bridge, the Roman bridge, the great Roman infrastructure builders who not only built this bridge, but a road network throughout Hispania, which connected Rome, actually, with the provinces of the Iberian Peninsula. This bridge has been here 2,000 years. It was touched up and renovated by the Arabs over time, but it is still the bridge of the Romans. We see this tower here, the Calahorra Tower, Torre de Calahorra. That's a tower built by a Berber kingdom, the Almohads, who conquered this place in the medieval period about 900 years ago, and built this tower to protect this strategic bridge. We can see on the far side the famed, magnificent mosque and cathedral of Cordoba, which is a mosque constructed by the Arab conquerors of Cordoba beginning in the 8th century, later turned into a church after the Catholic reconquest, so-called, of this region. So we see the Arab and the Catholic influences from this site. We can see in the far distance gates, which are the original location of the Roman wall of Cordoba, and in fact a monument built in Renaissance times for Philip II when he came to visit his province in the Kingdom of Spain in the 16th century. So from this one spot, we see this remarkable confluence. Past the cathedral is the Jewish quarters, where great Jewish learning and Jewish culture took place and thrived for many, many centuries. This confluence of cultures was the fertile base for bringing forward remarkable personalities of history. So when we think about Cordoba, we also think about the great philosophers that came from this city. The Roman philosopher Seneca the Younger, the great medieval philosophers, Averroes, one of the great thinkers of the golden age of Islam, Maimonides, perhaps the greatest philosopher ever in the Jewish tradition. These were sons of this soil, and this fertile mix of cultures gave emperors of the Roman Empire. Three notable emperors, Emperor Trajan, Emperor Hadrian, and Emperor Theodosius. Quite remarkable, the fertility of this place. But I think we can understand it and attribute it most importantly to globalization itself, because this region, a productive and strategic region on a great river that connects to the western end of the Mediterranean, has long been a prized place for productivity and for trade. The trade goes back even before the Romans. This was a site of Carthaginian trade. Carthage itself was part of the trading network of the Phoenicians, beginning almost 3,000 years ago. So the Phoenicians, the Carthaginians, the conquest by the Romans, a meeting place of the Eastern and Western Mediterranean, Jews living in this place, Arabs coming across North Africa and then crossing the Strait of Gibraltar to reach the Iberian Peninsula and to conquer this region and create Al-Andalus, making Cordoba the capital. Again, the influences from North Africa with the conquests of North African Berber kingdoms, the Almoravids, the Almohads in the medieval times. And then this place being a major center of the Catholic Kingdom of Spain after the Reconquista, the reconquest of the Iberian Peninsula by the Catholic monarchs, was completed in this region with the fall of Cordoba, an Islamic city-state, falling in 1492. So this region has always been prized, and when we stand here today, 2,000 years after the construction of the Roman bridge, we can understand this bridging, we can understand the beauty, we can understand the desire to be in Cordoba. From this point, we see the Roman bridge, a bridge built 2,000 years ago, touched up over time by the Arab rulers of Cordoba. And at the end of the bridge, on the eastern side, on the left bank of the Guadalquivir, we see the Calahorra Tower, the Torre de Calahorra, built by the Almohammeds about 800 years ago. This is a Berber kingdom, a North African kingdom that conquered this region 800 years ago, built this strong tower to protect the access to this great bridge. This bridge, 2,000 years old, was the only crossing of the Guadalquivir in Cordoba for 20 centuries, for 2,000 years until the 20th century. Very remarkable. Cordoba is a city of great philosophy. I would say Athens is the city of great philosophy, but Cordoba has played a crucial role in the history of philosophy and the history of ideas. If the greatest philosophers of the Western world were the Athenians, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Zeno of Citium, Epicurus, this city, Cordoba, was one of the crucial transmission belts of that ancient wisdom to the modern world, and a creator of great ideas along the way. Three of the world's most important philosophers hail from Cordoba. Seneca, behind me, It was Seneca the Younger because his father, Seneca the Elder, was also a famed Roman orator. But Seneca the Younger was the philosopher of the family. Averroes, which is the Latin name of Ibn Rushd, a great 12th century Muslim philosopher of Cordoba, and Maimonides, the greatest Jewish philosopher, also a contemporary in Cordoba of Ibn Rushd, of Averroes. Three great philosophers, and they all played a role not only in their own philosophy, but also in conveying ancient wisdom to the modern world. How do we know about Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Zeno, Epicurus, and the other great ancient Greek philosophers? How did that knowledge come down to us? Well, it was studied and taught and retaught, but in a remarkable, circuitous way that we'll explore in Cordoba. Starting with Seneca the Younger. Seneca was born in Cordoba around 4 BCE. The dates are not exactly clear. His father, Seneca the Elder, was a patrician. He was an equite, part of the equestrian class. That means a high-ranking Roman, just below senatorial level. And Seneca the Younger was therefore born into an illustrious family. His mother was Baetica, that means from the Roman province here, and was also a high persona in Roman society. At around the age of 10, Seneca was brought to Rome for a proper education. And a proper education in the early Roman Empire really meant a Greek education, because the Romans developed their philosophical ideas on the basis of Greek teaching. And to be a learned Roman was to speak Greek and to be educated in the Greek paideia, in the Greek education, to understand the Greek wisdom, because that was still the intellectual center of the Roman Empire. And that's the education that Seneca the Younger received. He received his education in the Stoic school of philosophy, the school that was initiated by Zeno of Citium in the Stoa, in the corridors where he walked in ancient Athens. And we know Seneca today as one of the leading Stoic philosophers. Now, Stoicism is a part of what we more broadly call ancient Greek virtue ethics. Virtue ethics means that the aim of ethics is to teach what is a good life, a life that is a proper life, the proper way of living. And the essence of virtue ethics is to cultivate the character for well-being, for living harmoniously in society, harmoniously with the truth. And Stoicism is part of the virtue ethics tradition that Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Zeno, and Epicurus all shared in. And at the essence of Stoicism was to find happiness and contentment from within, because the trials and tribulations of life were unpredictable. And if one based one's happiness on what was happening from outside, one was almost doomed to be unhappy. So the Stoics aimed to cultivate the internal well-being through calm, through fortitude, through a quest for the truth, rather than from the external circumstances. And alas for Seneca, the need for Stoicism proved to be part and parcel of his life, because it was a raucous life. He was not a Stoic in an ivory tower. He was a part of the politics of his age. As a member of the equestrian class. He soon received high positions in the Roman Empire. He was a questor. He served during the rule of Emperor Claudius, and he was caught up in many charges and antagonisms of the day, and in fact was forced into exile already in his middle years in Corsica. But then he was called back to become tutor of the future Emperor Nero. Well, you can already guess that that story didn't end so well. He came back, he tutored Nero, Nero became emperor, and things went pretty well for the first few years. Seneca, by all accounts, made a vast fortune by being a senior official, a consul, in fact, in the Roman Empire, and a trusted advisor to the emperor. But then as these things happen, there was a falling out and, in fact, a conspiracy to assassinate Nero, the Pisonian conspiracy in 65 AD, and Seneca was charged as being one of the conspirators. And this is a story, by the way, whether he was or was not, the story of philosophers hitting against power is an ancient story, because we can think about Socrates being condemned by the jury in Athens and drinking the hemlock in 399 BCE. We can think about Plato, who tried to be philosopher to the leader of Syracuse in Sicily, being sold by the leader into slavery, and Plato escaping for his life. We can think about Aristotle fleeing Athens in what would be the last year of his life, when Alexander the Great fell from power and Aristotle, as a Macedonian, was suddenly at risk in Athens and had to flee for his life, and said, "I'm not going to let Athens do twice to philosophy what it did," referring to the death of Socrates. Well, this fate befell Seneca. He was caught up in the charges of conspiracy, whether true or not, and he was ordered by Emperor Nero to commit suicide. And in a way reminiscent of Socrates drinking the hemlock bravely while his friends wept, Seneca is renowned to this day for his stoical approach to slitting his veins, lying in the bath, and dying as a Stoic, accepting his fate and reportedly remaining calm to the end. We know him today by that life history, but especially by his writings. He wrote letters, he wrote essays, he was a voluminous and much admired writer. He was admired for his great prose as well as his philosophical ideas, and his philosophy as a leading Stoic remains today as one of the treasures of Greek wisdom carried to the modern world.